In this episode, we take a look at some Dungeons and Dragons monsters that make you want to say, what the Hello friends, and welcome to this week's episode of Days of Dorker Past. My name's Rob, and in this episode we're going to take a look at some of those weird, unique, and odd Dungeons and Dragons monsters from the first edition. Before we get started, let's go over a little bit of the history of the books I used to come up with this list. Released in 1977, the Monster Manual was the second part of the new Dungeons and Dragons releases. And it was the first hardcover gaming book ever released. Well, according to TSR in their introduction in the beginning of the Monster Manual. The three core monster books were the Monster Manual from 1977, the Fiend Folio from 1981, and Monster Manual 2, released in 1983. The Monster Manual is a collection of monsters, races, and animals that originally appeared in various rulebooks, campaigns, and source books and magazines since D&D's creation in 1974. The Fiend Folio was a collection of creatures, demons, monsters from the UK's branch of TSR. A lot of the entries originated in the magazine that would be known as White Dwarf. Some were even reader-submitted from different open calls to fans that the magazine held. Monster Manual 2 was another collection of odds and ends from various books throughout the TSR library. To be honest with you, this became a bigger undertaking than I could have ever imagined. When viewer Yabba Dabba first mentioned doing an episode like this, I found it very hard. I love every monster and every creature that was ever created in Dungeons and Dragons, in one way, shape, or form. So, the first list that I made months ago, it was very hard for me to put a stamp of weird, WTF, odd, crazy, silly, whatever on the monsters. But as I took a couple steps back and I worked on a new list just recently, I couldn't stop myself. Because I tried to look at it as, what the F were they thinking? Before we get started, here's a quick disclaimer. And without further ado, here are the top 40 WTF monsters from the first edition of Dungeons & Dragons. Number 40, the Sturge. Now, what makes the Sturge a WTF monster? Well, the fact that these are bat-winged lawn darts that come flying at their victim and stab them with their proboscis and suck their blood. The fact that they attack in groups means that you could be stabbed a dozen times by these little suckers and they're all over you. The only way you can get them to detach themselves is to kill them. To me, that's just downright creepy, and this picture doesn't help. Number 39 on the list is Carbuncle. Now, this creature takes its name from a medical condition that is pus-filled bumps that collect under the skin. But what makes this creature really weird is that it's pretty much just a jewel-encrusted armadillo. Now, that might not sound that weird, but located within the creature's forehead is a large gem that could be worth a lot of money. But if you kill the creature, the gem will self-destruct for the most part. So what you have to do is plead with the creature to have it give you the gem. Now, that's just odd. I mean, it sounds like something that was created for just a home campaign and just thrown into the book. I can't really see it happening that often in the universe, but I guess if it does and you end up being richer, good on you. Now, number 38 on the list is the Varhuli. Now, what makes this creature weird is that it's nothing but a flying head. It has a 3-foot wingspan of bat wing, and in the center of it is a fanged maw of a face with writhing tentacles all around it. Now, that does sound kind of cool, but let's be honest. If you saw that thing flying at you in the middle of the night, you definitely would say, WTF. Now, number 37 on the list is a brain mole. Just imagine a 3-foot long mole, which by itself could be pretty freaky, but this mole feeds off psychic energy. When it comes across somebody using psionics or even magic that has psionic properties, it will mentally burrow into their brains and attack them. Now, there's a chance that this thing will drive you permanently insane. The only way to stop its attack is to kill it dead. Now, number 36 on the list is Askomode. This creature is the pure definition of WTF. It is a round fungi that can range from 5 feet to 10 feet in diameter. It rolls after its prey, and it doesn't tire for hours. Across its leathery surface are holes which it emits jets of spores. The spores shoot out in a 1 foot by 30 feet stream that when you are hit by them, you need to make a roll versus death from the poison. And that's not even counting the damage you take if these things knock you down and run you over. Now, number 35 on the list is Grey Ooze. Now, all the monster manuals and fiend folios and the such are filled with different slimes, oozes, puddings, and jellies. But what makes the Grey Ooze even scarier is that it is intelligent. Having an animal-like intelligence, the Grey Ooze looks like nothing but wet cement if you come across it. It can corrode metal at a quick rate, and if you happen to be having chainmail, it can get through that in 1 round. Now, the only way to destroy these things is with lightning. Unless you have a wizard in your group or someone that can wield electricity, you are screwed. Now, number 34 on the list is the Seafull, if that's how you pronounce it. Anyway, that's just an acronym for Colonial Insect Formed Artificial Life. Now, if you've read comic books, this is nothing new to you. It's a lot like the Marvel character Swarm, which is that it's a man-sized creature made from hundreds of thousands of insects. It cannot be attacked by melee weapons because it just breaks apart. It's hundreds and thousands of insects. And if you're asking yourself what makes this WTF, it's hundreds of thousands of insects. Now, number 33 on the list is the Squealer. Now, what makes this creature really weird is, just imagine, if you will, a gorilla-sized monster with a long, pig-like face. In its mouth are rows upon rows of razor-sharp teeth. It haunches over like a gorilla with long, spindly arms with claws on the end. Has claws on its hind feet, and protruding from its back is a 5th limb. With this limb, it can dangle from trees and drop on its prey. But it gets even better. It has the ability to mimic almost any sound, either that be the distress calls of a party member, the death cries of an animal, or the mating call of a bird. It has the ability to do that so that it can lure people, other creatures, in and eat them. Yeah, eat them. Now, number 32 on the list is the Bowler. Now, I know, the Bowler, right? What could it possibly be? It's a large living rock, round in nature, that rolls down hills and squishes people and knocks them off mountaintops. Pretty simple, pretty deadly, pretty WTF. Now, number 31 on the list is something that was created just for a rhyming scheme, and that is the Flail Snail. But not to be made fun of because they just simply made a creature with a name that rhymes, they went all out. The Flail Snail is a large creature that is about 8 feet tall. Imagine a normal snail, but instead of its head coming out of its shell, it has 6 to 8 clubbed, spiky flails. These flails move constantly, and when the snail flail gets chugging, it will kill anything in its path. But they didn't stop there. In order to kill the Flail Snail, you need to kill each one of the 6 to 8 clubbed heads or whatever are coming out of this thing. So it kind of has a Hydra effect in that regard. And again, not to be outdone, what to do with its shell when they created it? Make it magic resistant. But just imagine, if you ever were to kill one of these things, its 250-pound shell will net you 2,500 gold. Now, number 30 on the list is the Frog Hemoth. Yes, you heard me right. Frog Hemoth. So let's take two words and mash them together. That would be frog and behemoth. Now, this tentacled creature is 18 feet long and 10 feet wide. You'd think a creature that big would have a hard time hiding, but no! It waits to pounce on its prey in the middle of a swamp. It uses its 10-foot long barbed tongue to grab onto its prey and try to swallow it whole. The makers of this creature knew they had something special when, in its actual description, it says it's weird. And it actually has rules for being digested by it. Now, number 29 on the list is the classic Zorn. Now, the Zorn is a creature from the elemental plane. When they make their way to our realm, they live in dark caverns and eat rare minerals. If you ever were to find one and attack it, it would use its turn to rearrange its molecules and shift through the stone to try to get away from you. Now, it doesn't sound that scary, and it really isn't. But just take a look at this thing. That alone is WTF. Now, number 28 on the list is the Disenchanter. The Disenchanter looks like a camel with an aardvark's head. Yes, you heard me right. That alone is what the F. Because there's nothing to fear about the Disenchanter other than it's gunning for your magical +3 sword you just picked up. Now, number 27 is the Eustalagore. The Eustalagore is a fungi with an unrateable intelligence. It looks like a brain with stubby little legs and kind of slimy ribbon-like tendrils that come out from it. It's these tendrils that you got to worry about, because if it would entangle you with them, you take an acid-like damage that, if you don't save versus poison, will continually burn. Number 26 on the list is a giant slug. Yes, a giant slug. Doesn't really sound that scary, but look at this picture. That is the thing of nightmares. Number 25 on the list is the Basarond. These 6 to 7 foot tall fungal monsters have leathery wooden appendages. On the top of its body, it looks like an upside down umbrella or a bowl that's filled with black spores. Now, these spores, if you don't make your save versus poison, will clog your respiratory tract and you will die of suffocation within 5 rounds. Unless somebody cures you. It can also puff out a cloud of 20 feet to 35 feet that anything caught within it has hallucinations. Now, let's look at some of the hallucinations that you could roll and enjoy. Now, these creatures live in the swamp, so these are all based on swamp-like effects. So let's look at them. Now, let's roll a 1d8 and see what kind of hallucinations we have. If you'd roll a 1, you have a fear that you're going to drown in the swamp and you strip off all your armor. If you roll a 2, you feel like you're being attacked by spiders and you'll attack the floor trying to kill them. If you roll a 3, you feel like you shrunk and you'll shout for help to return to normal size. If you'd roll a 4, item held is now a viper. The individual drops it and leaps back to avoid its attacks. If you roll a 5, you feel like you're suffocating. You run around gasping for air and you run in random directions. If you roll a 6, you feel that your party has diseases, and you will not come within a 10-foot radius of any of them. If you'd roll a 7, you have a fear that you're melting, and you stand there howling and holding yourself together. And number 8, you feel that you have a leech on your back. You tear off anything worn on the back and attack it. Big fun, big fun. Number 24 on the list is the garbug. This one's pretty simple. It's a 9-foot long lobster with butterfly wings. Enough said. Number 3 on the list is the famous roper. And I don't mean Stanley Roper from Three's Company. Now the roper is a 9-foot tall, 3-foot wide, and as the book says, a mass of foul, festering corruption. This tendril beast wants to entangle you and pull you towards its toothy maw. Pretty simple, pretty messed up, pretty classic. So for number 22, what do? They go back to the drawing board and make the stroper. So how could you make the festering mass of corruption even better? Make it out of rocks. And there you have the stroper. And now we're at number 21 with a creature that was probably made by a 6-year-old, and that is the gorilla bear. And as the name says, the gorilla bear is nothing but a gorilla with bare paws and teeth. It uses its big paws to knock down opponents and claw the crap out of them. Yeah, like being a gorilla by itself isn't scary. Anyway, that was part 1 of a 2-part series going over the WTF monsters in 1st edition Dungeons & Dragons. In this episode, we went over entries number 40 to 21. Next week, we'll hit you with 20 to number 1. And like with most of my lists, they're in no particular order. But as usual, if you liked what you saw, hit the thumbs up. If you got something to say, leave a comment. I love reading them, and I love writing back to y'all. And if you want to see more great, dorky, nostalgic episodes, hit the subscribe, and hit the little bell if you want to be notified weekly of when a new episode drops. Anyway, thanks for watching. Keep being rad, stay dorky, and I'll see you next time.